Parker McCullum. Burn It Down Tour 2024, June 27th, Wells Fargo Arena. ACM Best New Artist, Parker McCullum Live, with special guest Corey Kent. Finally got a handle on you. What in the hell does a man? On sale now at IowaEventCenter.com. Parker McCullum Live. Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to an outdoor live edition of Legends and Listeners here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. Episode 44 today, coming to you from the Channel Seed Studios. As always, I am Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Registers, joined by Scott Dochterman, as always, of The Athletic. Scott, a little bit of news this week in the Iowa radio booth, and certainly, I don't know if we'll get to it or not. I think we probably will. Caitlin Clark left off the Olympics team. But we are looking forward to stretching our legs a little bit this week with some big picture Iowa football, definitely even some Big Ten topics that you got lined up for us. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, Chad, absolutely. We reach this time of year. It's always good to, to really look ahead, because I think we've reacted to the news almost weekly, and even surprisingly so. I think usually get into May is when there's kind of this thing slow down and pause, but whether it's with Caitlin Clark or the transfer portal or all these other topics, it's just really taken off over the last, couple of months. And so now here we're in a situation where we can kind of look ahead a little bit. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, let's discuss the news of the week, I guess, which happened on Monday, which would have been the announcement that Pat Angerer will be the radio color analyst for the Iowa Hawkeyes football season coming up. Angerer, 37 years old, obviously former star linebacker on the 2009 Hawkeyes, played for 4 years in the NFL, fourth in tackles, Scott, in the NFL in 2011, but then injuries really kind of took their toll on Pat's longevity on the field, played through a lot of stuff. I haven't gotten to talk to you about this. What were your thoughts on Pat Angerer being the choice from Learfield and Hawkeye Sports?
Awesome. I think it's great. And, part of it is you always wonder if they're going to take the safe choice. And I think Nate Kading would have been that safe choice. I love Nate. Don't get me wrong. I love talking to Nate, and we do talk frequently, and he would have been really good in this role too. But Pat Angerer is kind of the everyman. He's the guy that people gravitate to. He's the guy that, hey, they're having tonight we're having a get together at this bar in Indianapolis, and show up, and then 2,000 fans show up, and then they drink the place out of beer, and he's self-deprecating. He tries to make himself sound like, oh, I'm stupid. I'm blah, blah. No, he's really sharp. He understands the game, operates it at a high level. And I think he'll convey that. And my only fear all along is don't say something to get you fired, meaning, a bad word over the air or something like that. That to me is the only fear I have with him, because otherwise to replace a legend like Ed Podolak for fans, to do it with Pat Angerer, that it's not that they're missing a beat, because Ed's going to be hard to replace. But I think with Pat, they've got another guy in there that fans will adore, love, and really enjoy listening to.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty warmly received. I mean, I've definitely gotten some private responses, and more so that I don't really like the pick, not a big fan. So there is, it's a little bit, not a unanimous home run, I suppose, for some folks. But Scott, I think I agree. I think you want that person to be entertaining. You don't want him to be like a buffoon, but like when they brought Dennis Miller into the Monday night booth, that was probably not the right move ultimately. But you want a guy that is you don't know what he's going to say. Maybe like a Bill Walton type. I don't know. You know what I mean? A little bit out there. Pat Anger certainly, is an Iowan through and through, and the 4 finalists were all Eastern Iowans who played for Kirk Ferentz: Nate Kading, James Vandenberg, Mitch King, and of course Pat. There were 2 other guys that were deemed finalists but could not make it work with their current schedules, and that would have been Anthony Herron and Dayton Hughes. And obviously with the Chiefs broadcast on Sunday, that's a difficult double to pull off. And then Anthony has Bears radio on Fridays and Sundays, and also does college television on Saturdays. Both the guys were interested from what I've been told. So really they had 6 strong finalists in a sense, and Pat becomes the choice. I like the fact that we don't know what we're going to hear. I will tune in for sure, not just because I have to. I think it's going to be interesting. He doesn't have radio experience, but I think that's okay.
But he has certainly a lot of experience in front of microphones. And he was one of the most entertaining interviews that we had during his career, in 08 and 09. He was fun when he was out there and we were doing interviews. He was one that you wanted to flock to because you just didn't know what he was going to say. And he relates so well to people because he's from Eastern Iowa. He's from Bettendorf, and he played linebacker there. He was tough as hell. He was just really a hard charging guy, somebody you can really relate to. And then also, again, self-deprecating, funny, charming, but also a member of one of the better teams that Iowa ever had. I mean, it still is the highest ranked team since 1960, the 09 team, and got along with everybody. Also, overcame a lot of adversity in his Iowa career. He was on the path of flaming out and becoming just another guy. And instead he straightened himself out. But, among the others, Mitch is from my hometown. James Vandenberg was kind of a surprise. I think he's really sharp and would have been fine. But, here's the thing, there would have been detractors with James Vandenberg, partly because of him, how he played.
Greg Davis. Davis.
And it was unfortunate. He went from 25 touchdowns to 7 because of the offensive change. Mitch is kind of a loose cannon too, a little bit, and he would have been okay. But I think Pat is a little more entertaining, and so you're getting that entertainment value. You're getting a lot there. I'm happy. I'm excited for the choice, and again, he wasn't the safe one. Nate would have been the safe one, and so they went out on a limb a little bit, and it might energize Dolph too, and because Dolph and Eddie were a tandem for so many years, but now it's a little different, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I talked to Dolph about it a little bit, and he was excited on a lot of levels. I also talked to Learfield for it, and they said the camaraderie. They did 4 test runs of the fourth quarter of the Iowa-Michigan State game and some pregame work with these guys in recent weeks. And they really like the camaraderie that kind of they found with Dolph and Pat Anger. So I think that's important too. And I mean, Pat, he can talk to anybody, like you said. He's just like, I'm just, I didn't put it in my story, but he's like, I'm just a, fat bald guy with 3 kids. Like, like he's going to be hilarious. He's going to like every answer, is going to make you laugh almost. And he says he's going to tell it like it is, Scott, which I really hope they let him do that. I hope that they don't put any kind of restrictor plate on Pat other than you don't want him to go controversial where he's going to find himself out of a job. But from what I've heard, not from him, but from others, that it is well paying too. It's a very important gig. And, he's going to be doing more than just the radio. He's going to be doing appearances. He's going to be really kind of plugged back into the Hawkeye program, which Pat himself is very excited about. And he was kind of on that approved Kirk Ferentz short list too. So that's about the last I have to say about it. Any final thoughts on it?
I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for the fan base because you want some rah-rah. You want people to provide you with red meat, and he's going to do that. He's going to show up at an iClub or wherever and say some things, and he's going to make you laugh, and he's going to make you stand up and cheer. And I think that's what's important in this position. And maybe they saw that, and maybe they see the growth. Year one, he's not going to be perfect. He's gonna flub some things, and he may say some things that don't make sense. That happens. That would happen to anybody in that role. But by year 3 or 4, he's gonna always provide some really good opinions. And I hope that whether it's offense or defense, he can really point it out and say, hey, this is a reason why this didn't work, and not sugarcoat it. Ed never did. Golf never did, and Bob Hansen doesn't. So I think if he fits right in there and does that, he'll be perfect. And it'll force a lot of Iowa fans to probably say, I'm going to go ahead and listen to this on the radio at the same, try to sync it up with the television coverage.
Absolutely. And on defense, there's no position that knows the defense probably better than middle linebacker, maybe free safety in the Phil Parker system. But there, we know that those guys have to know a lot about football. You can't play for the Indianapolis Colts and be a top tackler without knowing a little bit about football. Also buddies with Pat McAfee. So kind of cut from the same cloth, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we move into more Iowa football, Scott, this is a great chance to say some nice words about our presenting sponsor of Legends and Listeners, which is GameDay Men's Health. Fellas, it is time to get yourself right. Get back in the game with GameDay Men's Health. That includes testosterone replacement therapy, TRT. Low T is very common in men as we get older. GameDay has a game plan to get you feeling like you're in your 20s again. TRT is a great way to improve your mood, your overall well-being, increasing your muscle mass, your strength, your sexual performance, your energy, your mental aptitude, and just overall joy. They can also help you with weight loss. Get started with a free private, no obligation consultation. You can check them out at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or call one of their locations, Ankeny, West Des Moines, which I go to, or North Liberty, which Scott goes to. Almost 5 weeks in for me, Scott. Still kind of trying to dial in the perfect plan, but I got some more blood work next week. It's very methodical, no awkwardness, and I feel really upbeat about what's ahead and what's happening for me.
I'm in the same boat, and I'm really excited about this, Chad. I mean, I've been kind of fighting the battle of the bulge for, unfortunately, since I quit smoking in the 90s. So it tells you, where I'm at on this. But I think that they've got me headed in the right direction. I'm starting to feel some of the pluses, and I can't wait for more of these, because the more it boosts me, the more energy I'm going to have, and the better performances and everything. I think this is something that will really be helpful, for me in my life and the quality of my life, as we, us old dudes, when we round our 50th, and go forward.
Well, and the more I talk to people, like just sort of about their health in general, people that have gone through this type of thing, like they'll swear by it, so it's just awkward to get started maybe, but I encourage people to visit GameDay Men's Health and check it out. All right, Scott, let's charge into Iowa football here like a blocking sled. Let's attack it with some gusto, some testosterone here. We're gonna do 5. We have 5 topics here. Scott drew these up, but they're all great because it gives us a chance to talk about the upcoming Iowa football season. We're going to talk about individuals. We talked a little bit about some recruits last week. Now we're going to talk more about the existing guys on the team. And number 1, Scott, let's start with this. Who will jump from good, aka maybe a starter or a key rotating guy, to potentially great, which you termed perhaps even first team All Big Ten? Do you want to do one on each side of the ball? Okay, we'll do that, and I'll let you go first. And you choose which side of the ball you want to start with.
I'm going to start on offense, Chad, and my choice is going to be Connor Colby. I think Connor really flashed at certain times last year, especially when he was pulling on some of the counter plays. I mean, he was really lining up well. He was getting his hands on guys. He was hitting with gusto. And I can see him taking that next step, because remember, last year was his 3rd year. A lot of times that's redshirt sophomore territory for an offensive lineman. And he was injured at times, and he's still playing well. I think this is the year where he goes from being a guy, a decent player, a good starter, to potentially one of the best in the Big Ten at his position group. So that's my choice on offense. Chad, what say you on offense?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't take mine. But I like Colby. I like the Colby pick a lot. And I'm going to stay on the offensive line, Scott. And I'm going to go with a guy that I feel like so far in his career has been a little bit underperforming, maybe even polarizing at times. And that would be the center, Logan Jones, because I still believe in Kirk Ferentz and his ability to identify a center. I think Logan has everything it takes. He has the strength. He has the mental capability. He just was really banged up last year, as we know, and he didn't have the experience 2 years ago. I mean, he was thrown out there as a rookie. I feel like I wish he wouldn't have gone to 65 because I feel like it really accentuated like, okay, here's the next Tyler Linderbaum. And I feel like the expectations were maybe just a little bit too high, maybe even in my head. But I think Logan Jones definitely has everything that it can take to potentially be a dominant center and maybe have an NFL draft decision, Scott, potentially, because he could stay one more year. He's one of the guys that could use a COVID year. So I like him a lot. I don't know. I thought about Jennings Dunker too, actually. So I think we're both seeing a lot of improvement on the offensive line as being possible this year.
Yeah, and specific to your choice, who would have been my number 2 in this, is that I think this is where Tim Lester's offense can really help him. We're going to see the ball. We're going to see who can help running the running game, the passing game, all that sort of stuff. But I think the slight hesitation that all the motions will cause will allow offensive linemen to get their reach blocks better. And that's where you're going to see with somebody who now has improved his technique to where he's a senior. He's in that position in Logan Jones. We know the strength. He's the program record holder in the squat. You know, he's close right behind Tristan Wirfs when it comes to the hang clean. I mean, he's got all that strength and that power. He's got the technique now, and he's got speed and quickness. If they can provide that one fraction of a second left, if he can get to the second level, I think you're going to see a much improved center in Logan Jones.
All right, let's jump to defense, Scott. And I thought of a lot of different guys here. I'm going to go with the 5-star just because he's been solid. But, you know, after the interception in week 1 last year, which was a spectacular interception, Xavier Wampa, you know, did not have production-wise the season maybe that you would want. And now he goes from sophomore to junior year. It's almost like a contract year, I feel like, in the NFL, where it's like, okay, let's prove it because he's draft eligible after this coming season. And don't forget, he played the last half of the 2023 season with a broken hand. So that makes interceptions and, you know, ball skills a little bit secondary. And he was just trying to fulfill his assignments. I was really impressed with him up at Wrigley Field. I thought he did a great job against Brendan Sullivan, not letting that Northwestern offense get going. I'm going to go Xavier. We've seen over here in Central Iowa just how spectacular Xavier can be with the ball in his hands. I could see Xavier making that jump from good player to potentially first team All Big Ten, even in an 8-team Big Ten, just because he might get those 4 or 5 interceptions, maybe a couple touchdowns even off those interceptions.
You know, he was one of 3 players that I identified in this on the defense, and there are others too, but he was, you know, right in that. I'm glad you brought him up, because if you didn't, then I probably would have myself, because I do look at him in that territory. Tremendous hitter. He's a better tackler than I think people realize. You know, he's a good cover guy that's getting better in that regard, and he has great ball skills. So I could see him, you know, with his frame, with his athletic ability and the knowledge of the defense. And if he's healthy, all parts of his body are healthy, he can really take over. And Iowa has 2 or 3 guys in that secondary that have the potential to not only be first team All Big Ten, but the All-American discussion. And I think he's one of them. Batting between 2 guys, I'm going to go with Aaron Graves. And, you know, he's been a rotational guy the last couple of years. We know the potential. I mean, he was the Max Preps Athlete of the Year in high school. I mean, as dominant film as I've ever seen. And part of that is the class that he played in. You just couldn't block him, and you couldn't stop him, and, you know, trying to face him. But then also, you know, sticking a kid in this quarterfinals, then scoring 33 points the same night in a district basketball game. I mean, just a freak athletically to the nth degree. I think it finally translates to the football field. I think at times it flashed in the past, but he's still pretty young. And to do that in the Big Ten, where in the West Division, although not necessarily skilled, it was very much a line of scrimmage league, and it was hard to really generate that. I think we're going to see him take the next step. Dude's already got his bachelor's degree, by the way. That is just, yeah. Wow. I mean, he walked in, he got his AA degree, Chad, before he even got his high school diploma, because he was attending classes at Iowa Central concurrently.
Dang, man.
So, now he's going into his major, entering his third year of college. Brilliant kid, big. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. So that's the guy I think. Now he's going to be a starter. Y.A. Black was my other one, but
I knew that was your other one. Yeah, I know you're really high on Y.A. And I didn't know if Castro would qualify, so I didn't go with him, but I think he could be in that all Big Ten or all defensive back of the year discussion too, potentially. Good choice. And Aaron Graves and Xavier Wampa both in that third year in the program of Iowa phenoms. So we kind of parallel there. So number 2, Scott, I'll let you go first. Who will jump from a nobody, aka maybe barely played, to a somebody, maybe a starter, maybe a key rotational player? You go.
All right, I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball for this one to start out with, and I'm going to go with Brian Allen. There's been the only place where they've had a lot of attrition has been up front, which leaves room for somebody to fill that vacuum. And I like what they have right now as the starters up front, but they're going to need somebody to step in and take that next step on as a rotational piece. And I think Brian Allen is one of those guys. And and a lot of it is you look at him, he looks the part. He has the big skill, he has the body for it. He's taken those steps forward. And it's going to be between him and Max Llewellyn for me on this. But there's just something about Brian Allen, that I think can really step in as a pass rusher, interior or exterior on passing downs. I think he's going to be a guy people will really know and respond to, and he's going to take that next step.
Yeah, I love the pick. He's got so much potential for sure. And I think he could be he's going to learn a lot from Deontay Craig this year, and hopefully, by 2025 be a real key player. So that would be a necessary step too. Iowa does need help in the pass rush. Good choice there. I'm going to go with John Nestor. Maybe not a big surprise because he was one of the spring, I guess, darlings, but he has not played really other than special teams. And so just everything we've heard about Nestor, I would not be surprised. I feel like he's going to probably be that starter opposite Jamari Harris. I think he's going to jump Deshaun Lee. That's no offense to Deshaun Lee, but I think he's got a real good chance to do that. And he's also capable at the cash position. So let's say Iowa gets an injury at safety. Maybe Castro slides back. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Castro slides back to safety. Nestor plugs in at cash. So I like that flexibility as well. We've heard the Riley Moss comparisons. I'm not quite ready on offense, Scott, so I'll let you go. I'll react to whatever you do.
Okay. To me, this one has got to be, you got to go with a skill position player, and you got to go with a wide receiver. And it's like, well, which one? And I'm going to go with Jarrett Bowie. They need an X. They need somebody to play that, which is basically tall receiver who could beat one-on-one coverage. And he's a guy, he played a little bit last year. He got in some games early on, and then, we didn't hear much from him, and they wanted to save him, and it made sense too. I think he's a guy that's got some skills that they can use, that they can bring along, and he can take a step in. And nobody to somebody. That means somebody who could be in the rotation, somebody who could take snaps, 25, 30, 40 snaps a game at that position, make some plays. And so, am I grasping at a straw? Can I go with Caden Weegan? Can I go with a lot? Yes, I could pick anybody there. But I think just having that type of player in his second year, make that jump, that's the type of player that I think fits this category.
Yeah, he definitely physically looks the part. So yeah, if he can just make that jump, and certainly there's opportunity there, especially with Jacob Bostic transferring to
Mhm.
Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Kamari Moulton. We talked about him
Mhm.
last week on the show a little bit. Liddell Betts seems really high on him. Just the fact that he's bulked up after kind of getting that cup of coffee as a true freshman would not be. And Liddell Betts is not a guy that's going to deal too much with seniority. He's going to play the best guys. So I think Kamari Moulton could be the type of player that ascends, maybe even becomes a leading rusher on the team. I'm not going to predict that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is a key rotational piece. And that is kind of the category we're talking about here, from a guy that was basically getting afterthought carries a year ago to being a key guy in the offense in 2024. All right, Scott, next topic is, maybe I should have saved Kamari. Which youngster, redshirt freshman, true sophomore, will make a contribution beyond special teams? So this is a tough one. Go ahead.
On offense, I'm going to take Kamari Moulton. That's what I have written down, and for all the reasons that you said. I think what struck me, Chad, was once you reach the postseason, that last year was the year where it doesn't matter, it doesn't count towards their games played and everything. And he got in a lot, and he was a player that I think they valued. And one thing that struck me from your interview with Liddell Betts was that his weight last year, he looked like a point guard to me. I just looked at him and thought AAU point guard, and a small young man, precocious. Now he's 200 pounds. Okay, that tells me a lot. This guy gained a lot of weight. Now, will that weight translate well to the playing field? I'm sure that's what they're watching this summer in the conditioning. Can he put it on, and is it good weight? And but I do think he's a guy that's going to make an impact. Could he be I think he's already probably number 3. And can he take even more carries? But we also know, of course, in Iowa's offense, the running backs kind of get chewed up a little bit. So he's that guy for me in this category. So, Chad, who do you have besides Kamari that works well in this one?
Yeah, I know. I kind of jumped the gun on some young guys here with my picks, so I hope that doesn't screw you up. But I'm going to go Caleb Brown. I know people might think, oh, that's a returning guy. Well, this is a guy that's a redshirt sophomore. He was a redshirt freshman last year for the Hawkeyes. Didn't get his first catch until November. So he's still young, and I think he's definitely probably going to be the go-to receiver for Tim Lester. He's got the talent. He just got to stay healthy. Caleb Brown, I mean, you may think of him as like some kind of veteran, but he's not. He's got 1 month of college football experience, but you clearly could see last year that Iowa knew that they had something in Caleb. Kind of when things started to click for him, I was real impressed talking to him over the spring. I thought he really you just really seemed locked into the Tim Lester offense, excited about it, happy to come to work every day. And he's the type of guy that they can really accentuate in what Tim Lester wants to do. Maybe like a Deebo Samuel type. I don't know. Somebody like that.
Yeah, he's still pretty young too. I mean,
yeah.
He played 4 games at Ohio State. I think somebody accidentally put 5.
2 games at Ohio State. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and Iowa listed him at 5, and I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't play 5.
Yeah.
So I think he's that kind of player. Okay, who do you have on defense, Chad?
Let's say. So I already blew my John Nestor pick. So we're gonna.
I didn't. So I saved it for this category. But
I'm sorry. See,
yeah,
part of these improvisational shows is maybe we'll steal each other's answers. So why don't you talk about John Nestor real quick, and then I'll jump back in.
Southside John, man, I think there needs to be some T-shirts from Ray Gun on this one, just like Southside said. From Marist, all the reasons that you stated, and I think it's going to be a really good, healthy competition among those 3. And this is one for it's just a kind of a point in time. John Nestor, TJ Hall. And Cohen Entringer is more of a safety, but Deshaun Lee in particular, because Jamar Harris is going to be gone after this year. So is Sebastian Castro. So all 3 of them have a place in this program. This just might be a point in time, but as we heard, there was a lot of praise, and Phil Parker doesn't dish that out unless he really matters. And I think what we saw with him is the John Nestor really fit what he wants. Now, could things change? Yeah, absolutely. But I really like the projection that they have for him. He played special teams all last year. I think he's got a chance to start. And, you know, he might be a cash next year, you know, and because that's an important position too. So I like everything we heard, and I think he's that guy.
Let's go Zach Lutmer. Kind of the Phil Parker name drop of the spring. Plays safety, but you never know. One injury, and you might see Zach Lutmer back there. And so might be a little bit of a reach to say he's going to definitely play beyond special teams, but it's somebody I definitely have an eye on, Scott. Just when Phil Parker mentions you, it's worth following. All right. Category number 4 here. Who needs to have a good summer, Scott?
I'm going to start on the offensive side, and you kind of took one, so I'm not going to say Caleb Brown on this one, but I'm going to make it the easiest and most obvious one, and that's Cade McNamara. You know, you're talking about now coming into camp. He needs to be. He's supposed to be healthy at this time of year now. You know, out there working, doing everything he can. You know, he's playing softball, and I think with all the lateral movement that softball requires, you know, which would freak me out if I was the coaches, just because, you know, you got to move your knees and legs and stuff, you know, if you're playing infield, especially. But I think in his case, he needs to get on the same page with his receivers. He needs to get on the same page with Tim Lester's offense, pass routes. This is everything that they brought him in for, to be that guy. And we didn't see it last year. He was injured. He wasn't very good. And then he got hurt, and you know, significantly. I want to see him grow. I want to see him play well. I want to see, and this summer it has to happen for him, because there are no more mulligans. So I think that's what we need to see. So Chad, who do you have on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely my number one choice, was Cade McNamara, for all the reasons you stated. And honestly, Scott, my number 2 choice is Brendan Sullivan. Like, they need to hit on this backup quarterback plan. Then we talked all offseason about the need to go get a quarterback. The plan sort of fell into place. They got probably the best guy that they could out of the portal. I mean, you could debate that, but at the time, might have been best available in the portal. They got him. This is a guy that started 8 games in the Big Ten, and he needs to hit for you. He needs to be an instant hit for you, because we know with Cade McNamara's injury history, at least recently, you got to have somebody ready. And if he's not going to be ready, then all of a sudden your projection for Iowa as maybe even a potential playoff team becomes, you're going to be lucky to go to a bowl game. You know, if you have a situation like you did last year where you have nothing at quarterback after Cade. So I was thinking about some other guys, maybe a Mason Richmond. He was also higher on my list, left tackle. Like, he had such an injury-filled season last year. He needs to have a healthy summer. But for this team, I mean, I feel like if Sullivan doesn't pan out, then once again you've missed a quarterback. So I feel like that's got to be somebody that hits. So defense, Scott, what do you got?
A lot of directions to go here. I'm going to go with Deontay Craig. And I think part of this is I think highly of Deontay Craig. I think he could be a good player. And this is maybe he was also recommended for me in that good to great category. But I want to see him take that step and go from being a really good defensive lineman that's kind of holding the defense together and doing those things. I want to see him becoming an all Big Ten caliber player, because he kind of came, you know, he was highly sought after. He was a 4-star by certain outlets, and thought he could be a real pass rushing threat. And I want to see him take that next step as a pass rusher. And I think this summer could really help him get there. And hopefully he can. And so he's the guy I want to see use that good summer to be that good story, you know, that Iowa talks about. And if he is, then this defense will be lethal.
Yeah, he just didn't have the production last year that he wanted, Iowa needed. Iowa just didn't have as good of a pass rush besides Joe Evans, it really was kind of non-existent. So Deontay, I know, was banged up a little bit last year. He only played, I think, 6 snaps maybe in the Big Ten championship game. He was either that or Nebraska. One of those last couple games, he didn't play much.
Nebraska.
Yeah, that's right. And so good choice there. I was thinking about Ethan Herkett, but he's kind of established. Like he's another guy that needs to up his production. He had one career sack, but it's a good player. So I'm actually gonna just say this, Scott. Reese Dakin. I know it's not defense, but for Iowa, it's defense. He needs to have a good summer. This is your punting plan after Torrey Taylor, the future Bears legend. So, can he get those directional kicks, ironed out? Can he have, accept every snap and, boom it and not be phased by a punt rush? It's a tough adjustment. Torrey did it great, but Reese is younger. He's 19 years old, and it is a big summer. It's a big position for Iowa, the punting position. So I feel good about him, but I'd need to see. I don't want it to be a disaster. That would be bad for the Hawkeyes. The way they play football, field position football. So the last one here, Scott, is a pretty fun one. I'll tee it up for you here. Who has the potential to be a fan favorite, Scott?
I'm going to go on defense, and there's a couple of guys there, and I'm going to go with Sebastian Castro. And part of it is, in my tenure of covering this program, I think he is the biggest hitter since Bob Sanders. At that, he's a cash, but he's safety. He can really lay the wood to players, and that nothing changes the dynamic of a game like a big hit. It just changes the excites the crowd, it energizes the team, and it demoralizes your opponent. And that's whether a fumble is involved or not. And then to top it off, he's a fantastic cover player. He's got pick sixes. He's got everything you're looking for. And even though his disposition is not, he's not the, guy, just going to do all of that. But just with his play, he's the type of guy that can change the game and then change the tenor of the stadium more so than probably any other player out there.
This category got me thinking, Scott, about, guys maybe that even later in their careers sort of went from guys that were maybe doubted or whatever to fan favorite. And I think about a guy like Riley Moss. He's a guy that was kind of criticized early in his career, even though he was a true freshman trying to cover guys, like his first or second career start. But by the end, he was one of those outspoken, funny guys, that people loved, and became a third-round draft pick of the Denver Broncos. So I think that's the type of guy we're looking for in this category. Maybe a guy that maybe is established but could take that jump into fan favorite. And so I'll mention a guy that I don't think a lot of fans know about. We haven't interviewed him that much, but he's a total character, and he's a potentially really good player, like a really good player, and that's Jennings Dunker. I think he could become kind of that cult hero type guy if he has a few pancake blocks early in the season and the run game's mowing him down, outside zone to the right, and Jennings Dunker's flattening some safety downfield, and Caleb Johnson's high stepping into the end zone or whatever. But he's just such a goofy character, and I would like to interview him more. He's just got personality to him, man, and I think that he's got that potential anyway to be a marketed fan favorite as well.
Oh yeah, being thrift shopper, goes to he and his brother would go to thrift shops, and that's what they would buy and turn it around, and the arguments he gets into with Logan Jones, and of course he's two-time defending hay bale thrower in Soul and Beef days. So there's so much there that, he's absolutely can be a fan favorite. And, and offensively, I took Seth Anderson because I think he does have a vibrant efficacy to him a little bit. I really like what he presents. First pass of the season last year, caught a touchdown and looked like, woo, Happy learned to putt, and of course, Happy left his putter on the first tee. Or the first green, and I think for their offense. So I think he's got a chance to really take over and be a really good player with Cade McNamara in this offense and got a little bit of juice to him. So if that's the case, I think that'd be really great. But got anybody on defense that can do that, Chad?
Well, I think we've talked about just, pretty much about everybody, and people know Jay Higgins, people know
Yeah.
Nick Jackson. There's really not a lot of new guys on defense potentially to become that. Quinn Schulte's not going to be like, whatever, like a viral type of quote, anything like that. So it's hard for me to pick someone. So here's what I'm going to do, Scott. I'm going to say, not on the football field, but a football player, Ben Keeter, is going to be a fan favorite by January, let's say. At heavyweight, I wrote a story about him last week. We touched on him a little bit. He's coming back to football next April, but just to have a little spot here to touch on Ben Keeter's story, it's pretty remarkable. He's going all in on wrestling here the next 10 months. Sky's the limit for him potentially at heavyweight. Could he be, going to the national finals? It'll be, heavyweight's a tough division, but and then back to spring practice next March. So just a little curveball there. Want to pause here and remind you that summer is here, and it's a great chance to kick back and relax with a glass or two or three of Steeple Ridge bourbon. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning craft bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer, ask for it by name. This is really high-end stuff, and it is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. All right, that was a fun conversation, Scott. We took a lot of time there, but that's cool. I feel like our legends and listeners will eat all that stuff up, get you excited about football season. But we are a Big Ten show also. And let's talk some Big Ten, Scott. Again, these are categories you came up with. You are, arguably the preeminent voice of Big Ten football at the Athletics. So I'll let you kind of kick it off here. We picked 5 topics. Where do you want to start the conversation here about the new 18-team Big Ten? I mean, we're going into a brand new era here of Big Ten football.
Yeah, this is a new era, and there is going to be a lot of change. And I think what we've saw, and maybe this is a little off script, but I think what we saw is the blow up of the divisions, which will be really different in style, because we saw the Big Ten West kind of drift to this risk-averse physical line of scrimmage type of situation, and you had to win that in order to advance, but it didn't really help the teams once they got to Indianapolis. Now, when I look at this league first, Chad, and that is Ohio State, and that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to say Ohio State has what it did in the portal is going to elevate Ohio State to the national, if not the semifinal, certainly I think the championship game, potentially the championship, by going and getting Quinshad Judkins at running back, Caleb Downs from Alabama at safety. I mean, he and X to me are the most talented safeties in the Big Ten. And Caleb Downs was a second-team All-American as a true freshman. To go and get them and supplement themselves and have Will Howard at quarterback, that's going to be the difference maker there, whether they're, a team that merely just wins the Big Ten championship versus the national championship. But that's probably where I will start, Chad. Ohio State. Are they going to win it? Or do they have the guts of a team that's going to get past Michigan? So that's probably where I start with the Big Ten right now.
Well, and I assume most people listening to this know this, but their offensive coordinator was the head coach at UCLA last year and the former Oregon mastermind, Chip Kelly.
Exactly.
That is maybe the biggest portal or offseason not portal, but off-season edition, coaching portal, I guess, right? Chip Kelly.
Yeah,
so I'm very, very, very curious to see how that all unfolds. Will that blow up? I mean, he's, Ryan Day is the offensive mind, really, and now you bring in Chip Kelly. How's this all going to work? Very fascinated, Scott, to see how that works. And then another category you have on here is, Jim Harbaugh goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. How does Jim Harbaugh's absence affect the national champions, the reigning national champions, Scott? What do you think?
I think it's going to be a real challenge for them to get back to what they were this year. Talking about quarterbacks, who do they have at quarterback? That you're losing JJ McCarthy too, but you're losing really a quarterback guru and a motivational guru in Jim Harbaugh. And then you're losing a lot on defense that went to they had 13 draft picks. And that's really going to be a struggle for them to put themselves back in that same position. I think Sharon Moore is a really good coach, and I think he's going to do a lot of good things. But year one, I think losing Jim Harbaugh, the motivation that they had last year with him, even though he was suspended for a lot of the season, I think there's still going to be, everybody's going to be gunning for him, Chad, and that from their rivals to even the mid-level teams. And if they feel like Michigan's wounded, they're going to take advantage of it. This is going to be a tough year for them. And tough for Michigan might be 8 wins, but that's for Michigan. That's like, whoa, that's tough to get past, especially have last 3-time defending Big Ten champ.
Yeah, it brings up interesting thoughts. As eccentric and strange as Jim Harbaugh was, he was a unifying force for that team. And then think about all the time that he spent just pumping up J.J. McCarthy. That to lose your leader, the guy that his leadership is what vaulted him off the NFL draft boards, right? Kind of like almost a Tebow type of guy. You lose him too. So I feel like, step back is predicted, I think. And then you think about Ohio State, Michigan. Oh, they're going to be at the top. It's probably Oregon this year, right? With Dylan Gabriel at quarterback, Dan Lanning. You don't think of Oregon off the top of your head necessarily when you think of the Big Ten, but that seems like the team that's probably going to take, to me, Michigan's spot in the pecking order this year. But that leads us to the third category that you listed here, Scott, which is this when Penn State takes that step over the top? What do you think?
They have the best opportunity to fill that vacuum, but they have to do it too. They've only done it once. They've only made it to the Big Ten championship game once. And we've heard about it. Of course, that's part of the reason why we don't have divisions, because Penn State was one of the big pushers and getting rid of, they want to be unrivaled. They don't have a rival. They're the only team to not have a rival because that's their theme, unrivaled. And I think right now when you look at this, they have the most experienced signal caller in the Big Ten that at times played at a very high level in Drew Aller. We saw it firsthand, Chad, in Happy Valley. That was his best game. He looked really good. And they have a 1-2 punch that only Ohio State can rival, and Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They have a really good defense. They lost some players, but they have a really good defense coming back. They play Ohio State. They play USC. They play Washington, Wisconsin. They have some really good games coming up, but can they fill that vacuum? Can they fill that Michigan vacuum? Can they be the team to get to Indianapolis, play Ohio State again, get to the playoff? That's what they have. They have to do that. If they don't do that, then I think people are going to really look. Their fan base is going to really start to frown on James Franklin and wane on him, even though he's had some really good years. You got to punch through, and now's the opportunity, because now getting to the playoff is different than getting to the Peach Bowl, as kind of the consolation prize. Do you think that they have that opportunity? I mean, they have the opportunity, but do you think they have the potential to do that, or are they going to just be community chest on the Big Ten's Monopoly board?
Good one. That's a good reference there. Caught me off guard. I don't think they're going to do it, because I'm not a believer in James Franklin. I know he's good at developing like a top 10, top 12 program, but not that upper crust to me. And I heard enough, like in NFL draft, listen to a lot of NFL draft guys leading up to the draft. You and I are both big into the draft. Now I'm not as much as you, but and I just kept hearing stuff about, these Penn State guys that were getting picked pretty high, but they just didn't really get the most out of them in college. And that just gave me a lot of concerns about how Penn State develops these amazing recruits that they get. I mean, Kirk Ferentz says it all the time. You look on the field in warmups, and that's like an NFL type team out there. They get the guys. I just don't feel like James Franklin has really delivered enough. And in an 18-team Big Ten, I just don't have confidence that he's going to be in the top 2 to get you to the championship. Maybe they could sneak into the playoffs, Scott, maybe, but I'm not a believer right now. I'm not. We topic 4. I touched on Oregon, so I'll let you talk about them here. Do you think Do you think they can win the Big Ten? The Ducks are they the co-favorite, I guess, with Ohio State in your mind? Where do they end up this year?
Yes, and it's going to be tough. I mean, they play Ohio State and Michigan along with Washington and I think maybe USC or something. But they play. They have a really challenging schedule. But Ohio State's at home, and Dylan Gabriel, can he be? I mean, he's been a very good quarterback, very productive quarterback. But is he a great quarterback? Is he Heisman quarterback? Bo Nix was. I don't know that he is. Dante Moore, taking him from UCLA, that was really a coup, I thought. He was a true freshman. He didn't play very well statistically, but he's got a lot of potential. Can he elevate the Ducks? Evan Stewart, getting him from Texas A&M was a coup at wide receiver. I think they've got the potential to be a very, very good team, a playoff team for sure. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot of tough trips. This is a new league. It's hard to walk into a new league, as we've seen with Penn State and with Nebraska and other teams coming in. You just can't automatically walk in and think, all right, we're set. We're going to be fine. You're playing new systems, new teams. You're traveling those long distances. So yes, they're very much a contender. The after Ohio State, in my eyes, the most talented team in the Big Ten. But can they survive the road trips going to Michigan, which I'm not necessarily high on, but they've got to go to Michigan. They're going to get their best shot. That's not easy.
Yeah, I mean the toughest road game Oregon had last year at Washington. That's the toughest place to play. Probably is they lost. So it's going to be tough going into the big house, 3 time zones away,
right?
And deliver your best performance. Yeah, good stuff there. I think I've got Oregon right there with Ohio State. I like Dan Lanning. I like Dan Lanning a lot more than I do James Franklin. That's for sure, as a coach. Right. Last question on your list here, Scott. It's a good one. Who is the non-Iowa dark? We talk about Iowa all the time on this show. The non-Iowa dark horse to maybe contend for a Big Ten title or a playoff spot in the 12-team expanded playoff that begins this year. Who do you got?
Can I say I don't know? I mean, I know that sounds weird, but you kind of circle around. Okay, which team may have this, may have that.
Well, let's discuss some teams that maybe could jump.
I think Iowa's best friends, BFFs, Wisconsin and Minnesota, have that kind of potential. And I would probably say Wisconsin did not look the part last year. How do they adapt to year 2 under Luke Fickell? Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. Last year, Tanner Mordecai wasn't really that good. He was okay, and statistically they were okay. But they went to the portal. They fortified their defense. Can they go and be the type of program that Luke Fickell envisioned when he came to Wisconsin? If he can, then I think that they're very much in that competition. If they can't, then they're in Mediocreville at 7-5, and then you're wondering, did we take a step back? Did we push out our Tom Davis, and did we get Steve Alford? I mean, and that's really what I think Wisconsin could be. And there are a couple other teams, but I'll let you kind of go and take your crack at this one.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but Nebraska's on my mind as potentially a team that I really like. Matt Rule, much more than I liked Scott Frost, who I feel like Matt Rule's got them going in the right direction. I don't know if this is a dark horse, Scott, but I feel like people are maybe dismissing USC a little bit after losing Caleb Williams. But Lincoln Riley has historically been a really good coach. As Kirk Ferentz said, now they're going to take defense seriously with D'Anton Lynn as their new defensive coordinator. So if they could just play some defense, Scott, they could absolutely contend for a playoff spot. I mean, Lincoln Riley, I feel like, is among the top coaches in the game and certainly has motivation after last season's disappointment. So, but I like Iowa. I do. I like Iowa as a potential here. I know a lot of people still projecting Iowa as an 8-win team, but 7-8 win team. But I think they got definitely a chance to get to 10. And I think 10, Scott, would get them into the top 12. Don't you?
Yeah, it could get them in the
Maybe.
top 12, but not in the playoff. And
Sure.
because of the championship tie-ins. And I think the absolute worst case scenario for Iowa right now is Iowa State comes to Iowa City week 2 and Iowa wins. They went, both teams end up 10-2, but Iowa State ends up winning the Big 12 and not only gets into the playoff, but gets a bye, and Iowa gets left out because it's it's maybe third or fourth in the Big 10 and doesn't quite get into that top 12. That absolutely could happen. And that's a very scary thought for Iowa to have to endure that. Oh yeah, we beat Iowa State, but we didn't get in the playoff, and they did, and they actually got a bye. Iowa is a team to me that is capable. If their offense is decent, just say decent, average, above bad, it could be a 10 or 11 win team and be a playoff contender for sure. If not, the luck of last year to some extent, the fortune will flip the other way, and you'll be a 7-5 team, and you'll be like, oh, man, I don't know if this can happen. But I think Iowa has very much is that potential. I think Nebraska does too. Minnesota, Max Brosmer, I think he's going to be a great addition at quarterback from New Hampshire for them. So there are a lot of teams, but I'm anxious to see what Maryland does after, Tagovailoa's gone. Do they have an adequate replacement for him? In Illinois, this is kind of a big year for Brett Bielema. This is the expectation, take that next step. So a lot going on in Big Ten.
Yeah, 18 teams. We got plenty of time to cover all this in the summer, Scott. All right, we got a couple minutes left. I'll try to keep this under an hour. So you are 2 for 2 the last 2 weeks in hot takes on the WNBA and professional women's basketball. So I'm just going to tee it up for you. And just I don't even know what your thoughts are on Caitlin Clark being left off the Olympics team and all the rhetoric that has followed. But do you have any thoughts?
If I knew that she was left off because on merit and merit alone, that they just didn't feel like her game translated in an international scene at this time in her career, I could buy that. But I don't think that's the case. And I think that's what's sad, and it's really unfortunate. And now we've got political lining up. You got the side on the right. House. I saw a tweet from the House Judiciary Committee from the GOP. She absolutely should be on there. I'm like, oh no, don't get in this fight. I think the women's basketball is worse off without her there, because I think you have that opportunity when she steps on the court, even if it's only for a couple of minutes a game. Then you're going to see people, oh, Caitlin's in the game, and you're going to see it in Paris. You're going to see it in America. You're going to see it all around the world. The people are going to pay attention. And if she hits a logo 3, people are going to be very excited. So it's unfortunate to me that we won't have that. For her mental health, her best interest, get off the grid. It's probably for the best. You're not in the spotlight. You're not traveling. You're just come back to West Des Moines, hang out, with Brent and Ann, and, just do nothing, sit in your basement for a while or whatever you'd have there. It. I don't. That's what I think, but I don't matter. But Chad, what do you think?
Well, I just, as much TV as we talk about, how TV drives everything, it's just hard for me to believe that NBC is very happy about this whole deal. I mean, good grief. I mean, how many billions do they pay for Olympics rights? And you're not going to put the best or the most attractive star of the sport. And people can deny that if they want to, but she is. She draws the most eyeballs, and she's not polarizing. Everyone else makes it polarizing. She's not polarizing. She's never said anything polarizing. Honestly, what's the most polarizing thing she's ever said? Nothing. She threw a ball off her head once against Holy Cross. That's about the most polarizing thing you could say. But
she said "damn it" once.
Oh yeah,
and ended up on a T-shirt. No, I think when you look at Cheryl Reeve and what she tweeted, and it's more than just about one person. The W is more about one. That's to me where I'm like, we've said it all along, Chad. The WNBA has to figure it out, because you have this gift, a tremendous person that has just galvanized the sports as a whole. She's the most talked about player in the country. No, I guarantee that more people are talking about Caitlin Clark than anybody in Major League Baseball right now. And yet, why are you guys bristling so much at her?
Yeah.
Let her be her. Be excited about it. You guys don't have to sit with us common folk on airplanes anymore. It's because of her. Otherwise you might have to again at some point.
All right. I think we're going to cross an hour, but this was fun. And here's the last thing I'll say about Caitlin Clark today so a lot of people know that I used to be the motorsports editor at USA Today before I came back to Iowa at the end of 2012. So I'm covering NASCAR this week at Iowa Speedway. I was on the phone this week with Brad Keselowski, who's a NASCAR champion, a veteran driver in the series. And guess who he wanted to talk about coming back? Just like not talking about on the interviews, just he wanted to talk about who, Scott?
Caitlin Clark.
That's
what everybody wants to talk about.
If the NASCAR driver of the number 6 Ford Fusion wants to talk about Caitlin Clark, I bet you he speaks for a lot of people. And it would have been a better show this summer in the Olympics to have her on there. But I agree with everything you said. Like if it had to do with, I think she's like top 15 in the league in scoring. She's not taking as many shots though as she did in college. Not even close. So that's not like, I don't think you could definitively say she's not one of the best 12 players in the world. I don't think you can say that. I think she's on a crappy team.
Yeah.
And if people could catch her passes, she'd probably be averaging a double-double right now.
Right.
So I don't even buy the merit thing necessarily, but I just think there was a lot of bitterness and they didn't want her on the team. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And that's stupid.
I'm sure Diana Taurasi didn't want to be roommates with her, so therefore she's not on the team. And that's really sad. It's short-sighted, it's self-serving, and people see through that and understand it. And I said it last week, Chad, and I'll say it again. When we get to the 4th of July and people don't feel differently about this, and then you get to the Olympics, people will quit watching, and I don't mean everybody, but I mean the lion's share of it. And then it's training camp talk and people are into other things, back to school. And then it's just out of sight, out of mind. And next year, do you think people are going to say, yeah, I'm going to get the WNBA app again? They're going to be a little more hesitant than they are this year.
I mean, I can tell you that I've felt less enthused about Fever games for sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't even like, it's not because of her. It's just like, I don't know. I don't need to, I'm just not in the mood to spend 2 hours watching it. Yeah. I'll watch the Aces because I'm enjoying Kate Martin and Megan Gubson. That's like fun basketball to watch. And that's a team still kind of figuring it out still with some injuries. But I don't know. I can just say I've just lost some enthusiasm for the WNBA myself. And I was really excited about it going in.
I'm there with you. And I don't want to hear any more broadcasters talk about this is just the toughest league in the country. Yeah, I've heard that from the SEC for all these years. I can deal with it. Why do I have to hear it from the WNBA? We all know that. Like you're talking to a toddler or something like that. We're not a bunch of hayseeds in Iowa. We have seen good players and it's a shame and it's sad. It's probably sad more than anything for me, Chad, that we're seeing somebody who brought such joy to so many people. And we saw so many young women and old women and men come to those games wearing 22, throwing signs, going on the road, going to Cleveland, watching these games, so excited to watch her play. And they're basically being told, you're wrong. You needed to watch everybody. And the gatekeeping of, if you weren't watching this 3 years ago, then don't tell me this. No, you're bringing in fans. Isn't this what you wanted? All eyes? Well, yeah, but we didn't want it on her. We didn't want it on because of this. Okay, you don't get to pick and choose your time and your place to decide who people want. And, and I'm not going to get into the rhetoric on whether it's race, gender, orientation, whatever. I'll leave that to everybody else. But I just think that it's really unfortunate that she's become a lightning rod because all she's wanted to do is grow the game and make it better for everybody else and stand there and I'm not particularly close to her at all, but I just only witnessed this as a journalist. I've seen so many interactions of people that came away with smiles on their faces and hugging each other and watching these games. And here we are, Chad. We're not debating whether or not she's good enough or whatever. It's all sad. I just wish that the people would think differently, but the petty jealousy of the WNBA might devour itself before it has a chance to really grow.
Well said. Yep. Well said. Great show, Scott.
Yeah.
It was fun to do this on the deck. Well, we've got some interesting summer schedules coming up, folks. So there's going to be tweaks here and there. Next week, our plan is to come at you on Friday. And then we've both got some vacations coming up. So we've got some extra wrinkles coming up with legends and listeners as we get into July. So stay tuned for that. Looking forward to that, Scott. But we're not that far from Big Ten Media Day. It's like a month away, pretty much. So that's getting crazy. Anyway, for Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Thanks for joining us on Legends and Listeners from the Channel Seat Studios. Talk to you next Friday here on the Iowa Everywhere Network.